My beloved, do you think it's an accident that you're hearing my voice right now? No. Heaven planned this moment long before you took your first breath. Here on Holy Voices, we share the whispers of eternity, the messages that change hearts and awaken destinies. If your soul is ready, stay with me, because what you're about to hear might be the very word your spirit has been waiting for. Malachi 3 verse 10 says, "Test me in this, says the Lord, and see if I will not throw open the floodgates of heaven." Test God today with a $100 seed into Holy Voices. Since everyone in the community knows that this individual lied about you, the masks are coming off and they are viewing this person with suspicion. Unquestionable truth has emerged from what began as murmured misgivings. In real time, the complex lie is coming undone. And now, everyone who previously accepted their skillfully constructed lies is seeing them for what they truly are. The universe is ensuring that everyone has a front row ticket to witness their house of cards fall apart, and this is your moment of vindication. Your effort was the first indication. Questions that seemed like little daggers wrapped in worry started to come from someone you trusted, someone who had seen you create your aspirations out of nothing. Do you really think you're prepared for that promotion? You might want to wait another year. Your solar plexus clenched at the vibration of the words, but you wrote it off as imposter syndrome. The fact that energy vampires communicate in the language of your own doubts was new to you. This same individual, whose online identity was completely different from who they were in real life, had been closely monitoring your social media accounts. All of your posts were screenshotted, examined, and their flaws pointed out. They created complex statistics that tracked your audience interaction rates, identified the subjects that most interested them, and mapped out the precise recipe for your genuine expression so they could replicate it for their own failed platform. Meanwhile, a number of people were sitting in a private group chat on the internet, plotting your demise, at a place you would never think to search. They identified as spiritual entrepreneurs, light workers, and healers. However, the darkness that passes for love and light was pulsing through their messages. The leader, who had copied your words, your style, and your whole being to create their entire online persona, scribbled frantically into the night. This must be stopped before it gets out of hand. What is happening to them is not something they deserve. The complex web they had built around your life was something you were still unable to see. Your arrival at work wasn't merely naturally driven. For months, they had been providing the leader with information regarding your projects. Someone who had appeared to be such a helpful buddy had been recording your personal difficulties and disseminating them as intelligence in the group discussion. After becoming persuaded that you had stolen the techniques they had taught you, even the healer you had briefly collaborated with the previous season joined their digital coven. There was enough irony to choke on. These individuals, who said to be able to channel divine energy, spent their evenings doing the most obscene things possible. They had persuaded themselves that destroying you was a good thing for the cosmos. That your genuine gifts were really elaborate performances concealing a hollow core, and that your achievement was somehow undeserved. This tree of jealousy was nourished by money. They seek it like addicts, even though you've learned that money flows naturally when you serve from the heart and that it's a terrible master but a great servant. To them, each new client you acquired felt like a personal theft. They believed that every chance you had was proof of cosmic injustice. They were unable to comprehend that abundance is an endless spring that flows more strongly to those who have done the inner work, rather than a pie with finite servings. The leader was in a desperate financial situation. Their latest internet debuts had been a complete failure. Each one is a weaker copy of the material you produced months before. As consumers unwittingly realized that their offerings were artificial, their involvement had fallen. In an attempt to purchase the prominence that naturally flowed from a sincere connection, they had maxed out their credit cards. According to their perverted reasoning, ruining your reputation will somehow make them more credible again. The attack started out quietly. Errors in technology that ruin your job just before the deadline. Unexpected sickness that only appeared at crucial meetings. Friends who, with surgical precision, started to question your intentions. You're going too fast, don't you think? Perhaps you ought to be more modest. You nearly thought that you were the issue since the gaslighting was so skillfully done. They were unaware that every strike left the soul with a mental mark akin to fingerprints. Your hypersensitivity. Your early warning system was the same characteristic they were trying to take advantage of. You started to realize that the timing wasn't coincidental. Breakthroughs were always preceded by setbacks. Just when you were ready to level up, issues appeared. Once you noticed the pattern, it was so clear that you nearly chuckled at their amateurish approach to spiritual warfare. Artificial darkness cannot stifle genuine power. With compound interest, every spell they cast and piece of chaos magic they threw at you struck your true spirit's force field and boomeranged back. You first became aware of this pattern in minor ways, such as how their audiences began to see through the facade they had constructed with borrowed energy, how their own projects started to fail, and how their collaborations broke down. The boomerang effect picked up speed with frightful accuracy. The leader's complete content library was corrupted when their laptop collapsed during a live stream. After a random audit uncovered inconsistencies in their billing, your workplace competitor's largest client abruptly began to doubt their ethics. Clients who complained of feeling exhausted after sessions started to suffer from the healing practice of the supportive friend. The healer found that the methods they had attempted to claim as their own were actually age-old customs that they had picked up from the same instructors that you had. Every member of their virtual coven was subject to penalties that were specifically designed to address their unique offenses. Their negative energy wasn't the only thing the universe was returning. It was instructive, making them go through exactly what they were attempting to do to you. A divine comedian with a PhD in karma could have written the cosmic justice since it was so lyrical. If you hadn't ultimately realized the game being played, your supernatural protection would have appeared in ways that would have been incredible. More opportunities than ever before were created by their interference that should have been blocked. The most amazing boss scenario in history started to play out with amazing accuracy, despite their best efforts to stop it. A collaboration developed that would propel you into the precise role they had envisioned. Untouchable, influential, and visible. They were unable to keep an eye on or obstruct the partnership's arrival. Through a shared link, a prosperous businessperson from a completely different field had been keeping an eye on your work, even if they had never seen your public social media posts. They had been searching for someone who possessed the same level of strategic thinking and honesty as you in order to work together in a way that would revolutionize your professions. Negotiations for the contract took place via encrypted channels. The timeline moved with superhuman speed, and the meetings were held in places they would never consider keeping an eye on. Your refusal to play their game was what drove them insane. They anticipated reprisals, media attention, and a spectacular altercation that would support their portrayal of you as the antagonist. Rather, you kept on creating, building, and serving. You weren't passive by being silent. It was the self-assured silence of someone who understands how the cosmos manages its own legal system. You didn't retaliate every day. They were further seized by their own paranoia and remorse. They couldn't understand the strategic nature of the quiet. As they became obsessed with strategizing, you were getting advice from sources they had never used. Long before this specific bunch of energy pirates had appeared on the scene, your meditation practice had developed into direct communication with protective forces that had been watching over your path. Their attacks seemed more disorganized to outside observers the more focused you got. Their attempt to enter your personal connections was the pinnacle of their desperation. To defraud you, the leader made phony dating profiles. Through professional networking, your rival at work attempted to become friends with your romantic partner. Your family members were contacted by the encouraging friend who was worried about your mental health. Every attempt failed miserably, revealing their preoccupation to others who started to question their motives in an awkward way. When their neighborhood started to ask questions, it was the tipping point. Individuals who have previously known the After years, the main antagonist began to notice discrepancies in her account. Why did your launches always follow their breakthroughs? What caused their language to so closely resemble yours from months earlier? Why did they appear to be so fixated on someone they said they hardly knew? From within, the house of cards that they had constructed using stolen energy started to fall apart. The questioning began quite innocently. One of the leader's lifelong followers saw that the meditation method you had revealed months before was exactly the same as their own original method. Another observer noted that your blog entries from the previous year bore a striking resemblance to their most recent breakthrough discoveries. When challenged, they offered more complicated justifications that deceived anyone with true spiritual experience by claiming to channel the same guides and reach universal awareness. When a sea worker saw their sudden proficiency in the techniques you'd been creating, they had to face their own consequences. They failed in their attempts to assert independent discovery. The ethical transgression was not only professional when timestamps showed that they had used shared business systems to access your study files. Where your treasure is, there your heart will be also, Matthew 6 verse 21. Place your treasure in holy voices with a gift of $50 or $100, and let your heart be anchored in heaven. Colleagues began to doubt his integrity when it exposed a hole in his character. You learned about their entire operation. Through confession, not through inquiry. Disturbed by what they had done, former members of their group contacted you with screenshots, videos, and in-depth descriptions of the coordinated campaign against you. Their obsession was astounding in its scope. They watched your activities across platforms, evaluated your content like intelligence officers, and even tried to sabotage your personal relationships, what they called strategy, the universe called proof. Each confession was more unsettling than the one before it, and they came in waves. Screenshots of their planning sessions were supplied by someone who had only joined their group chat for a short time before their conscience took over. The amount of information was unbelievably intrusive. In order to time their attacks when your defenses would be weakest, they had charted your posting patterns, determined your emotional triggers, and even monitored your energy cycles. The stalking behavior was so severe that it was considered illegal. Another whistleblower who had participated in their video conferences described meetings that were more like war councils than religious assemblies. They had given you jobs like a leader as a strategist, a competitor at work as an infiltrative, a supportive friend as an emotional manipulator, a healer as someone who undermines spiritual authority, and a military operation. They had prepared thorough doses on your followers, determining who could be persuaded to switch against you under the correct circumstances. Their hostility wasn't a revelation that rocked your foundation. For months, you had sensed that. It was becoming aware of the sheer number of people who had been observing this. How many people were silent despite seeing the truth? You would never know how many had shielded you. Your energy field had been surrounded by a community of sincere light workers. Your name was mentioned in protection prayers by teachers you had never met. You were unaware that strangers had been sending you strength. The things you had previously attributed to chance or coincidence were explained by this unseen network of support. Technical issues that somehow had the potential to ruin your company are always fixed at the last minute. Mysteriously, the health problems that arose during critical times disappeared before they could do irreparable harm. Unexpected revenue streams consistently alleviated the financial strains that ought to have compelled you to violate your morals. Finally, a spiritual teacher from across the nation contacted you to share how they were led to incorporate you into protection rights. In my meditations, your name kept coming up. Until I saw what was happening to you online, I didn't know why, they wrote. Anyone with true sight could see the dark work being done against you. Their message contained the names of people who had been carrying out similar tasks, creating an unwitting network of spiritual guardians surrounding your mission. The target wasn't simply you. The catalyst was you. Your very being. Everyone around you was being forced to confront their own shadows because of your dedication to authenticity in a world full of spiritual trickery. The individuals that attacked you weren't truly upset with you. When they saw themselves reflected in your light, they were enraged. The issue wasn't your success. It was their lack of real inner work. This realization changed everything. There was no personal grudge behind the attacks. They were cosmic tests meant to make sure you were prepared for the task at hand. Each obstacle they posed compelled you to establish your boundaries, hone your spiritual practices, and define your mission. They would unknowingly turn into your most powerful spiritual mentors, guiding you through hardship and toward mastery. The money they had been preoccupied with started to come to you in ways they could never have predicted. You were an obvious conduit for it, not because you had struggled for it. The chances they had attempted to obstruct increased rapidly. They were unable to damage the reputation they had tried to ruin. Your honesty had somehow been honed by every arrow they had fired at your character. Rather, the partnership offer had financial stipulations that were far more expansive than you had previously thought. There was more to the contract than money. It was about having the means, platform, and influence to serve at a scale that corresponded with your growing awareness. It was the ideal irony. The world had been getting ready to give you a whole bakery while your adversaries had been concentrating on taking scraps from your current success. The financial flow has its own defenses. Fraud warnings that exposed the offenders were triggered by attempts to tamper with your bank accounts. Attempts to undermine your client connections backfired because, after seeing your poise under duress, your consumers were even more devoted. Instead of undermining your financial base, each economic attack they launched made it stronger. In their last desperate attempt, they exposed themselves to the public, not you. They had shown the extent of their own dysfunction by attempting to mobilize others against you. Screenshots of their private chats were made public. Stories of energy theft and manipulation were revealed by former followers. Their complex deception was witnessed by the exact community they had wanted to turn against you. The spiritual mafia's boss ended up right where they had attempted to put you. Separated, interrogated, and battling a lack of trustworthiness that vanished like morning mist. The universe, however, provided them with a way back to the light even at this precise time. The cosmic joke was that they could have accomplished all of their goals with the same genuine labor that you had, but they had opted for the quick fix of deception and thievery. The totality of the leader's collapse was remarkable. The evidence of their deceit was now on the platforms that had previously exhibited their acquired wisdom. Comment sections brimming with accounts of former clients feeling depleted and misled. Their efforts to limit the damage only made matters worse. With every explanation, additional levels of dishonesty are exposed. The religious group that places the highest importance on authenticity rejected them outright. Selected one. Messages like these are accessible to anyone, but few will take advantage of their full potential. That's what we're here to help you with. You've been waiting your entire life for this moment. The weekly Selected Ones group calls are now available on Zoom. These gatherings are actual power vortices where fates are shaped and selected individuals merge their minds to produce something that is impossible to exist separately. Everything changes at this point. You enter your brilliance at this point. A portal opens once a week, but only for those who dare to enter. Feel the energy flow through your entire being as you watch a level member of the Obsidian Inner Order go through these life-changing sessions. Participants in our most recent meeting were astounded by information regarding the enormous pyramids of Giza, highly advanced ancient power facilities, and the startling fact that the layout of Washington, D.C., perfectly matched the Kabbalistic tree of life. Members of the Star Chamber have unrestricted access to the entire recorded archive, which is a wealth of knowledge that increases in value every week. This is the moment that defines you. There is nowhere else to find the information, the connection, and the power that come through these calls. Now join the Inner Order of Obsidian. The description contains a link. Even though there aren't many Star Chamber spots left, your participation is more than appreciated. It's essential. The call has been ringing in your soul. Will you answer it? Now is the moment. In its boundless wisdom, the universe was still providing them with a path back. A number of spiritual instructors made individual contact with them, promising sincere assistance if they were prepared to own up to their mistakes and start doing actual healing. There was always the way to salvation. All you needed was the guts to start afresh with integrity and the humility to acknowledge your mistakes. The last parts fell into place as winter turned into the season of awakening, that timetable that kept popping up in your consciousness like a lighthouse beacon. With magical ease, the predicted collaboration started to materialize. Months-long contracts become available in a matter of weeks. Every barrier they put in your way turned into a stepping stone, making the protection that had appeared imperceptible clear. Everything you believed you understood about your mission was completely reinterpreted by the disclosures brought forth by the breakthrough. The collaboration was more than just a commercial venture. It served as a stage for world change. With the tools provided, you might reach millions of people who are in need of real spiritual direction. The timing was ideal for a shift in awareness that would make your message mandatory rather than elective. The realization went beyond achievement in the workplace. As the folks who had stuck by you during the attacks proven to be your real soul family, your personal ties grew closer. As like-minded people were drawn to your higher frequency, new relationships were made incredibly quickly. The sense of isolation you had occasionally experienced as a chosen one gave way to the realization that you were a part of a huge global network of light workers. The dramatic conflict they had been in was not the resolution. Writing in their brains. Through the straightforward force of truth, their entire business was quietly dismantled. Communities that had been duped started to inquire. Manipulated collaborators began to make connections. The deception network fell apart due to internal inconsistencies rather than outside pressure. The Lord loves a cheerful giver, 2 Corinthians 9 verse 7. Your joyful seed of $20, $50, or $100 into holy voices is more than money, it's faith in action. The weight of truth eventually topples any lies that are based on it. The intricate framework they had created to bolster their fabricated story was unable to endure the strain of constant examination. With every disclosed lie, the foundation became weaker until the entire structure fell apart in a series of disclosures that made their actual character abundantly clear. They never realized that you had been functioning from an entirely different paradigm the entire time. You had been playing the infinite game, where everyone can win by expressing themselves authentically, while they were playing finite games with winners and losers. You had discovered that sharing your light made it brighter, while they hoarded energy as if it were rare. They attempted to undermine others in order to elevate themselves, but you had learned that everyone is raised when you rise together. Their attacks against your fundamental being felt so ineffective, which was explained by the paradigm shift. They were fighting someone who went beyond ego identification with weapons made for ego warfare. They were unable to breach defenses they were unaware existed with their firepower. It was similar to attempting to use surface-to-surface missiles to sink a submarine. The wrong target with the wrong instruments. Persecution is not the burden of the chosen one. It's the accountability that accompanies unwavering spiritual defense. You can never again claim ignorance now that you understand how the game functions, how energy vampires work, and how spiritual warfare appears in the contemporary world. In addition to protecting yourself, you are being urged to illuminate the path for others who are still ensnared in the labyrinth of deceptive spiritual teachings and deception. The knowledge that your protection wasn't random accompanied the recognition of it. You had earned it by choosing love over fear and by serving others for countless lives. The protection wasn't a gift in cases where fear made more sense by preserving faith while the evidence pointed to despair. It served as a graduation gift for reaching higher spiritual development levels. Most people never try. The isolation of the leader was finalized. When the professional repercussions became evident, your workplace rival distanced themselves, as even their other conspirators turned against them. When their own clientele began to doubt their strategies, the helpful friend erased all proof of their cooperation. Throwing the leader under the bus to protect their own reputation, the healer issued a public apology for their role. The instant outside pressure was applied, the ties formed and the dark vanished. In reality, the leader's ultimate gift from the cosmos was the dark night of the soul. A chance for real change. If they were willing to give themselves up to the process, the ego death they were going through could give birth to genuine spiritual power. However, surrender meant owning up to their mistakes, making reparations, and beginning anew without the fabricated support they had depended on for years. Beating your adversaries is not the conclusion of your story. It changes into something more stronger. The abilities you acquired while fending off their attacks serve as the means by which you assist others in identifying and thwarting like strikes. You impart wisdom to the following generation of chosen ones using the discernment you developed in seeing through their masks. Everything you create in the years to follow is built on the unwavering belief in cosmic justice that saw you through their darkest campaigns. Your trials led to a teaching mission that was far more expansive than you had anticipated. In addition to spiritual counseling, students sought training, discernment, protective strategies, and education on how to remain true to themselves under duress. Numerous people were able to avoid similar attacks thanks to your experience, which turned into a masterclass in spiritual self-defense. The discovery they had worked so hard to stop serves as the starting point for a mission beyond their wildest expectations. You now see cooperation where they saw rivalry. You create abundance where others perceive paucity. You foster love where they cause dread. Rising to your full potential, the same thing they attempted to destroy, becomes the key that opens doors for innumerable people who are following in your footsteps. Over time, layers of insight reveal the profound lesson woven throughout this cosmic drama. Every attack they carried out served as a teaching tool for those dealing with comparable difficulties. Your reaction to persecution serves as a model for preserving your spiritual integrity in the face of adversity. By documenting their techniques, a guide to identifying and avoiding energy vampirism in all its complex manifestations is produced. What started out as an attempt to undermine your goal becomes the precise thing that makes your teaching unquestionably genuine and unshakable. As it effortlessly and gracefully flows toward your true objective, money turns out to be a great servant rather than a dreadful master. Money itself was never the dreadful ruler, rather, it was the desperate energy that drove their pursuit of it. When money is used as a tool for service rather than as a gauge of value, the great servant is revealed. The vibration of justice served and genuine labor rewarded now permeates every dime that passes through your hands. Having money in your possession allows them to do things they never would have thought possible. You invest your money in global awareness-raising programs rather than stowing it away for personal safety. Forums for genuine views that could not otherwise be heard, protection tools for targeted lightworkers, and scholarship programs for young healers. Massive constructive change is facilitated by money. You really realize what it means to be selected when you're standing in the aftermath of their unsuccessful campaign, surrounded by opportunities that came to pass in spite of their greatest efforts to stop them. Selected for service rather than privilege. Selected not for easy but for the ability to turn darkness into light by just staying true to oneself in the face of adversity. The same community that now views your former attackers with suspicion suddenly respects and acknowledges you. They see you as you have always been, a beacon pointing others toward their own true power rather than as a menace to be eradicated. For decades to come, you will serve humanity's awakening from the very visibility they have attempted to block. And in the quiet times between the praise and the chances, between the confirmation and the growth, you recall that you already had everything you needed to withstand their attack before they ever showed up. Fighting back was never the greatest strength of the chosen one. But the ability to stay bright when others went dark, to stay rooted when others lost control, to believe in cosmic justice while others called for instant retribution. Your awareness is still pulsing with the same frequency that began this trip. It is now steady and certain like a heartbeat, rather than urgent and terrifying. You have 5 steps ahead of you. You're following a path they haven't even found yet, not because you're attempting to win a race. Your mission is to serve love, and money is to fulfill that objective. Because you've established yourself as a clear conduit for service, opportunities come your way. You are surrounded by protection because you have allied yourself with ancient powers whose meager plans were but the germs of jealousy and unhealed hearts. The entire community, which previously viewed you with suspicion due to the skewed perspective they offered, now has a clear view of you. More significantly, you see yourself clearly, not as a victim who survived an attack, but as a chosen one who turned spiritual warfare into a master class in authentic power, opposition into opportunity, and persecution into purpose. This is what it means to be selected, not flawless, but unbreakable, and not without adversaries, but shielded by powers stronger than any human resistance. To become so bright that you can change the darkness just by being in your truth, not to avoid it. With light, triumph, truth revealed, and actual power, the game they began believing they would win has concluded just as the universe intended, securing its proper place in a world in need of true spiritual leadership. Because you demonstrated to everyone watching what it looks like to remain centered in love while the world around you chooses turmoil, rather than because you vanquished your foes, your story becomes a legend. And that frequency from the deep pre-dawn hours whispers one more message somewhere in the quiet between the end of this chapter and the start of the next. These are the same words that began this whole cosmic play, but they now carry the weight of full comprehension. Congratulations, selected one. Beloved soul, if this message has spoken to your heart, don't let it end here. Click that like button so the light can spread to more people who need hope. Subscribe to Holy Voices so you never miss the next word heaven has for you. And leave a comment below. I read every one, and I pray over them. Remember, faith grows when we share it, so share this message with someone who needs to hear it today. Until we meet again, may God's peace cover you and His voice guide your every step.